session.
And I believed in progressive politics, which was...
The 26th, we came to an agreement that we have to form an action committee.
My 4 years daughter was holding the banner as well.
The whole society's structure will change and that...
বেশিরভাগ লোকজন শেখ মুজিবের পক্ষে ছিল, আওয়ামী লীগের পক্ষে ছিল।
So Birmingham Action Committee was formed.
Well, I could start from the very beginning of my young childhood when I was a student in Nauga, where I was born. My recollection about my childhood was that I always believed that the society at that particular time, there was something wrong about it. Because I remember going to school when a little young boy, same age as me, was carrying my books as a bag. When I went to the school, I went in and he couldn't get in. So I thought that there was something wrong, why he couldn't go. So I came back and asked my mother, I said, why Abdul cannot go to school that I could? And my mother said, well, he's very poor, his parents are very poor, because at that particular time you had to pay for education, you have to even buy books, you had to buy paper, books and writing pads, you had to buy pencils, pens, everything. So obviously my mother said, that he couldn't go. So I said, can you not help to get him to school? And she said, well, I could help, but there will be others, many, many like him. But at least I'm helping him to, feed him and so on in my house and giving him a little bit of money for his parents. So I thought that particular incident that I remember very vividly, and I thought there was something wrong about the society. Why he should be deprived? Because he's not responsible for his sort of birth and all that. Anyway, so I began to think that the society must change. And then I grew up gradually, and I believed in progressive politics, which was the whole society's structure will change and that people will live with equal opportunities and so on. So in 52, I was only in class 8. But those days, of course, I had a lot of double promotion those days. You don't have it now. Because now, in Britain as well as in most of the countries in the world, the children are actually put in according to the chronological age. But those days, if you are doing well, then you actually missed one class and moved on to the next one. Anyway, so I was in class 8 and I was young, but I heard on the radio that some of the students were killed because they were demonstrating peacefully in Dhaka for the right to speak Bengali and to have Bengali as one of the state languages of Pakistan. And it actually made me very angry and bitter. And I thought something has to be done. And then I talked to some of my classmates and also students who are older than me. And we decided that we ought to do something in terms of demonstration or protestation against the kind of murder and the wanton aggression that was inflicted on the students in Dhaka. Anyway, so we did that, and that actually made me very conscious that we need to do something about the right of Bengali language in its rightful place. And that Bengali, although at that particular time, as one will remember, that Bengali-speaking people was the highest number in the whole of Pakistan because you had a homogeneous language, Bengali. Whereas in West Pakistan, there are many languages. Pashto, you had Punjabi, you have Sindhi and all that. And although we were majority at that time in East Pakistan, and our language was spoken by majority people of Pakistan, and yet that language was not recognized. I remember 1947, up to 1948, things were different. And people were struggling and fighting, demonstration and meetings and so on. And there were a lot of oppression on those people and so on. A lot of people were taken to prison and so on. So, yes, I grew up and then I went to the college, to Rajshahi, and then the university. And then still I carried on, continued to be active in student politics, both in college and in university, and then in Dhaka as well, Dhaka University. And I was elected vice president from the Students' Union, because at that particular time there are two organizations which were quite sort of known and quite famous. One was the Students' League and another was the Students' Union. The Students' Union was more progressive. Both of them were, progressive organizations, but Students' Union was. So, in other words, we were supporters of Maulana Bhashani, if you like, more so. Although Bangabandhu was originally with Maulana Bhashani, they used to work together. And that's when I also knew Bangabandhu at that time when I was in Dhaka. And I met him many times because he was the forerunner of the movement taking place in East Pakistan for not only the language but also our own kind of self right and so on. So in after Iqbal Hall, when I was vice president, and of course I became very involved with the movement, and Iqbal Hall was very active at that particular time. I was left-wing politics and so on. And then I was taken to prison as a security prisoner with Bangabandhu, and I was with him for 6 months. So we were together, sharing things, playing volleyball and so on. And I reminisce a lot of memories during my stay in the prison with him and many others. And then after 6 months, there was no habeas corpus. The detention without any trial. There was no trial. And every 3 months, it was renewed. And we were not taken to the magistrate's court or anything. So after that 6 months, I was released without any condition. And then at that particular time, not only that I was the vice president of Iqbal Hall Students' Union, but I was also the national president of National Union of Students of the whole of Pakistan. And this was the first time that somebody from East Pakistan was the president of the NUS, National Union of Students of the whole of Pakistan. So there was a conference in Canada, in Quebec. And because I was the national president, I was in prison, but then letter was waiting for me to go and attend. So I got in touch with the organizers, and they said, your ticket has already been sent. You can go to Pan Am and get a ticket, and you can fly. And then all expenses would be borne by us. So I said, how about anybody else from West Pakistan? They said, it's up to you to decide. So there was a guy who was the chairman from West Pakistan, but he was playing a foul game because he already wrote to the coordinating committee that I was in prison, I was against the government of the day, which was Ayub Khan, and that I shouldn't be allowed to lead the student community in the Pakistan. So I actually told them that, well, he was playing foul game, and then I would rather that he didn't come. So they said, all right, you will be the only one who will represent the whole of Pakistani students community, which is both East and West Pakistan. So I went to Quebec and I attended the conference, and I actually got a resolution passed by the conference in which there was a utter condemnation of what was happening in Pakistan, led by Ayub Khan. And so it was in the newspaper and all that, and so on. And then I was warned by Muhammad Ali Bogra. He was then the foreign minister. Before that, he was the prime minister. And indeed, I must say this, that when I came out of the prison, then my passport was seized, was taken, impounded by the government. So that I was not allowed to go anywhere else. So I got the ticket and everything to go to attend the conference. And I got in touch with my brother, who was a friend of Muhammad Ali Bogra. They used to know each other well because I'm from Nauga, and Nauga and Bogra is about 6 miles distance. Anyway, so he actually got in touch with Muhammad Ali Bogra, and it was Muhammad Ali Bogra, because he was the foreign minister at that time, intervened. And in fact, he rang the Iqbal Hall Students' Union telephone number and spoke to the provost, and he said he wanted to talk to me. So he talked to me and he said, look, I managed to get your passport. You can have your passport back, but it will be a limited time for 6 months restriction, and you must return. And while you are in the conference, please do not say anything against the government, because then you will not be able to come. But of course, I didn't accept that. So I had this resolution passed unanimously at the conference for that the justice was not denied to the students, and many students were still in prison at that particular time while I was attending the conference. So that, of course, was splashed in the newspapers and so on. And then Mohammad Ali Bogra rang me through the High Commissioner in Canada. They found out my number where I was staying, because after that I came to Montreal from Quebec and stayed with friends. And he said, don't go to Bangladesh, East Pakistan. Don't stay if you can, because if you do, you'll be immediately persecuted and arrested and so on. So, of course, that led me to ask for some kind of search for some kind of scholarship so that I could actually study at McGill. McGill was one of the best universities in Canada, and I actually wanted to do a PhD in economics. So I actually got myself admitted, but then the problem was the scholarship. So I found the scholarship as well, temporarily, and then it was extended. So while I was there in Canada, of course, there are few students, very few students at that particular time, and we actually demonstrated against the government of Pakistan. And also at that time there was this quarantine thing between USSR and America with Cuba thing, Cuban missile. So I organized something, that we should stop all this, because we wanted peace and all that. And because if there was a confrontation between two powerful nations, there would be enormous kind of impact on the whole world. Anyway, so I was active. Wherever I was more or less active. And then I had a lot of calls from some of my friends who are studying law in London. And they asked me, saying, well, if you do your PhD, you'll go back and you'll be a lecturer or a professor. You'll not have any immunity. You'll not be able to do much politics. So I think you ought to do some kind of professional kind of thing, like being a lawyer or a barrister. Then you can actually do the politics. So that prompted me, because my cousin was in London studying Bharat law. And some of my old friends that I was in, like Zakaria Khan Chaudhary, who is no more, and he was also very active in England. And he was from Baniachong. Anyway, and then even people like Maudud and others, he was also no more. They are my contemporaries, and they were talking to me and saying, trying to influence me to come. So I did. Finally, I decided to come and give up my PhD at McGill University and came to London. So when I came to London, I then was studying law. I got myself admitted to the Inner Temple to be a barrister, and I kept my dining terms. You see, in Bharat law, you have to dine. In 100 years ago or 200 years ago, there was no examination. What used to happen is the mood discussion. Somebody talks about things and so on. You listen, and the most important thing was that you had your dinner in front of those judges or the royalty and see whether you can actually use the cutlery properly while you are eating soup, whether you're making noise and so on and all this. This is on the basis of that etiquette and the mood discussion, debates that you took part on their basis 100 years ago. So anyway, that tradition was kept. You have to dining terms. So I kept the dining terms as well as I took the first part. I passed all the papers excepting one on the first part. But then I came to Birmingham because it was very difficult to, I couldn't get any money from Pakistan officially. Because first of all, I was in prison. I was a security prisoner, I was a political prisoner. And secondly, that anyone who was studying law, Bharat law and all that, the government wouldn't give any foreign exchange. It was very difficult those days to get foreign exchange. So what I did was that, I organized some of my people that I knew in London. And I said, well, lend me some money and we'll pay you back and all that. So finally, I just couldn't carry on like this. I thought I'll do some part-time job. And the Birmingham was advertising for teachers, supply teachers and part-time teachers and all that. And so I decided to come to Birmingham to do some teaching, supply teaching. So I came to Birmingham and did some supply teaching, started doing it. And by that time, I came to know people like Afroz Mia, Sabur Chaudhary, people like them and so on. Particularly Afroz Mia and Sorab Mia, and then Jamshed Mia, all these kind of guys who were later participated in 1971, became all these people. And they insisted that I should go for some kind of community involvement because I was the only teacher at that Bangladeshi teacher in the whole of the United Kingdom. I'm talking about 1963-64. And then Afroz in particular wanted me to be chairman of the National Federation of Pakistani Associations in Great Britain. Tusabtak Ahmed was the president. He is again no more, he passed away many years ago. And Mutin also from Manchester. They wanted me to be the chairman. They were all involved. So I said, look, I'm here temporarily, work for about 6 months. I'll save some money and I'll go back to London and finish my studies. And I'll be called to the bar. So they wouldn't have it. They kept on saying, well, yes, you can do it. And at those days, there were very few people. First of all, there are one or two doctors, not many, but they were not interested in politics or community work and so on. But because they found out that I was involved back in Bangladesh, also in London, with the student groups demonstrating against Ayub Khan and so on and all that. So finally I gave in. And then I had to go. They took me to different places in the United Kingdom to actually introduce me to these people so that they can vote for me. And finally the election took place and I was elected chairman of the National Federation of whole Pakistani community in Britain. So that gave me a tremendous exposure. My idea was that if I stay in the United Kingdom, I would like to be known to people so that when there is a progressive movement or demonstration, whether it is against the government or whether it is against racism in this country, then actually those people will respond because they will know me. So that was one of the temptations, one of the motivations, if you like, which made me to accept and accede to the request people are making. Particularly, Afroz was very much keen, and he was the one who took me in his car. I remember at different places. Anyway, so that was it. Prior to 1971, as you asked me, what else did I do? I actually, in Britain, when I came, I very much got involved in anti-government, Pakistan government, the Ayub Khan government and so on, movement. So almost every month we used to have demonstrations and so on in London against Ayub Khan and against the High Commission in London. And I remember that at that particular time, I came to be known to many people and so on, even Walsall, West Brom. So I formed the Pakistan Workers Association along with the Indian Workers Association because they were a fraternal organization. Then we had this coordination of Kashmiri Workers Union and then Jagamohan Joshi and after Joel of Indian Workers Association and Pakistan Workers Association. So three organizations were working hand in gloves. And we are very close to each other and so on. And we had the solidarity between the Indian Workers Association and particularly us. And we all used to organize the anti-racism kind of movement and so on. So I got involved and they were always pushing me. So I became the chairman of the campaign against racist laws, then the campaign against racism and fascism, CARF and CARL, and then Immigration Aid Unit, I became the chairman, and which was based mainly in law centers, in Harjwad Law Center, Sorty Law Center, and so on. So all this kind of organization, or Divided Families Campaign, they elected me. So I was very much involved in the anti-racism movement in this country, and demonstrations and picketing here and there and everywhere we're doing together. And often we used to go to London against the Immigration Act. Some of them were racist, and so we actually had to sort of fight against those Immigration Acts. So we were with Indian Workers and so on. So we're very active on this front, as well as on the Pakistani front against Ayub Khan. So we used to go to London against the High Commission office and so on, and demonstrated, and then give the kind of people like even Tariq Ali joined us, and so on. Sibkat Qadri, who was a barrister at QC, he was my vice president. He's died 2-3 years ago, last year I think. Sibkat Qadri, the QC, a lawyer, a Pakistani, and he was my vice president of the Pakistan Workers Association. And Zakaria was there and various other people and so on. So we did that on two fronts. I was involved in fighting in Britain against racism and fighting against dictatorship of Ayub Khan and so on, the military oligarchy. What actually was happening at that particular time was that these people who are senior to me, they actually had a tremendous affection for me. And of course, I was teacher at that time, the only Bangladeshi teacher and all that, and involved in other things, and they were there in anti-racist movement and so on, and they were there against Ayub Khan, some of them. But there are also others who actually were opposed to what I was doing. And when I organized buses and coaches and so on, different places, because we had branch in West Brom, branch in Walsall and so on, and people, so I organized the coaches to be sent there in the morning, so they would get together in the Smollett Park. So we used to actually, the coaches used to get together, we used to assemble all over the place there at Waverley Road. And then some coaches were half filled when they came to Waverley Road. And so what happened? They said some of the people went in the night and talked to them and said that if you go to the demonstration, your passports will be taken away and you will be stateless and so on. So many people are frightened. And those are the people who are opposed to, to what we are doing. So I had the advantage in that people knew that I was already active and so on. And many cases, I was fighting against the police. I remember one incident when, what's his name? His name will come back in a minute. He was a taxi driver. And I was living in Hall Green, a couple of 3 or 4 roads away from here. 5 o'clock in the morning, there were 2 or 3 cars came outside in the morning, outside my house. And immediately I woke up because all of a sudden the doors are shutting. Everything is quiet. And then they rang the bell. And I thought I was in trouble. People are going to attack me and all this. Now then I looked through the window and I found Wazir Ali. So I was very angry. I know them. That why 5 o'clock, they are knocking at the door. And when I looked at the Wazir Ali, his face was bloody and all that. So they came, I said, what actually happened? The Handsworth Police, the Thornhill Road Police, very famous. Thornhill Road Police Station, his man was taken and was beaten up by the police. So I said, when? He said, well, about 12 o'clock. We went to many leaders in Birmingham, and they said, no, they wouldn't dare do anything against the police. The only person who could do it, you. So I said, fine, I'll do whatever I can. So anyway, I sent them to the hospital in order to get the certificate, what kind of, the injury he sustained and how it could have happened. So, and then the next morning I went to Sheila Wright because Sheila Wright was the MP at that particular time in Handsworth. And then I went to Dennis Howell. I wanted support. I talked to Roy Hattersley so that I could just get the support of different members of parliament to actually take up the particular case. So these are the kind of events. All right, so when I was doing the anti-racist movement in Birmingham, there was an article I actually came out, my interview with the Birmingham Post, the full article with my picture. And at that particular time, the National Front, they changed the name and all that, John Tyndall. And they were going to have a meeting at Digbeth Civic Hall at that time. It was a long time ago when Bangabandhu came and spoke. So I gave a statement that these people are committing crime against humanity and they have no right to actually use the civic kind of property and all that. So it came in the paper and all that. So I had several telephone calls saying that I will be killed, my family will be killed, and my house will be burned. And so I had to get in touch with the police, and they came and guarded my house for 2-3 days. And then I called a meeting again at the Digbeth Civic Hall. Their meeting was cancelled. And when I went, the people came to the meeting. And then the police came and said they had information that a bomb has been planted in the hall. So we need to actually do investigation. So all people were taken out of the hall. And it was a kind of fake news and so on. But there was a friend of mine, an English friend, John Plummer. And he had a blue sports car and I had a blue Capri, which is also a sports car. So we parked together in the same kind of side road by Digbeth Civic Hall. Both are blue. And so when after the meeting came out, and his car was completely burned down. His car was down. So obviously he didn't have an enemy. they actually targeted me, that my car and so on. And then both of them are blue because they thought it is my car. So these things happen. And so when the 7th of March came, and before that, I was already involved in the liberation struggle, in that I believed that East Pakistan cannot stay with West Pakistan because of the subjugation, the oppression that the government, the ruling class, was actually imposing on the people of East Pakistan. So it was already in my perception that Bangladesh, East Pakistan, cannot stay because the existence of East Pakistan or the concept of Pakistan is an aberration of any decent kind of perception. The two countries, two wings divided by India, 1,000 miles, can unite together and become one country because of just religion. It cannot be, because if it's one religion, then all the European countries should have been one country rather than, different countries. But it's a question of culture, language, very much important, language and culture. Religion is also, but the culture and so on, language. So I always believed that one day it will happen that East Pakistan will be an independent country, because there is no way that people of West Pakistan could stay the government of West Pakistan, which was always dominating. Anyway, so when the 7th of March came, I was prepared for it. And when Bangabandhu made this historic speech, which is really very powerful, and we heard it and we read it, and then we knew that something is going to happen at that particular time, and we sensed it, there will be something. And then of course 25th March came, and I remember you organizing something in the beer lounge. Same time that there was a crackdown, a crackdown in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan, by the West Pakistan forces. And anyway, when it happened, we got united. It was a spontaneous response. And of course, I was very much involved. And Azizul Haq Bhuiya, who became the secretary of the Action Committee, was my secretary, Pakistan Workers Association. And he used to say in the public, when he used to organize meetings against racism and for the people of East Pakistan, he used to say that he has got two leaders, Maulana Hashani and Tony Haq. But others were not all that involved, because there is a propensity, there is a tendency that whenever a government is in power, even now, then many people support that government because they get benefit, they get invited by the High Commissioner, they invited this and that, because they say government party. So when our BNP comes into power, the BNP people here have more influence than others. So this is the nature. And at that particular time, many people wanted to be seen as the supporter of the government of Pakistan. Something happened after 25th of March, and then the people actually became united. The Bangladeshi people, the Bengali-speaking people, they became united. And it was a spontaneous response for the people of Bangladesh living in the United Kingdom in particular, and Birmingham, that they responded to any call that we made in order to get together and mobilize and protest and so on. The primary purpose, of course, was to raise funds for the liberation movement, for the soldiers and all that. And secondly, to actually internationalize it, nationalize first, in order to get the support of the British government to recognize Bangladesh. And that's why one of the slogans that we said when we went in front of the Downing Street is recognize Bangladesh, Bangladesh. That was one of the slogans. From 26th of March, we very active. We started having the meetings in the nights and during the day everywhere. And there was a tremendous support and tremendous response that people came to this kind of meetings and so on. And at that particular time, the people who work in the factories, they used to get wage packets, the names on the top, and it's a brown kind of envelope type thing. And the money was there. And some of the people didn't even open the weekly salary, weekly wages they used to get, and they donated to the fund for Bangladesh, for the liberation struggle and so on. So from 26th March, 25th March and so on, we became very active, and we decided to hold a huge public meeting in Smallheath Park. And those days, of course, now, if you want a meeting or demonstration, you have to have the police permission and all that, or you have to give notice. Those days you didn't. You just had it I remember, again, going back in the anti-racist movement, we had a meeting in Digbat Civic Hall again, and then we were demonstrating against the State Bank of Pakistan because they were, and the PIA, Pakistan International Airlines. Joshi was a formidable speaker of Indian Workers Association, and he was the General Secretary. And he came and spoke, and then people got excited because he actually sort of compared the State Bank of Pakistan with the colonialism. So he went to talked about how colonialism, how oppression was at that time during the time of the British Raj, and how Jallianwala Bagh and so on. And there were some people, Pakistani people, very old people, and the speech was so fiery, was so inspiring that some of the people stood up and said, "Kaun ka badla kaun se lenge?" Pandemonium in the hall. It's about 500-700 people. And this was a meeting that I called against the State Bank. So he said, "Do you want a demonstration?" So I said, "We haven't got the placards or flags or anything." He said, "Never mind, we can go." And I said, "Where?" He said, "Against the Evening Mail, another organization that is against the pro-establishment and all that." Anyway, we went. So there was this kind of spontaneous response that you had on 26, 27. People were coming in, talking about it and so on. On the 28th of March, that was a historic day in that he gave a call to all the people, and through telephone and through leaflets and so on and so forth, that a big rally will take place in Small Heath Park, and that people should assemble and so on. Because that was the main intention was to actually take an oath of allegiance to Bangladesh and saying that we will carry on no matter what happens until Bangladesh is liberated, and we will continue to help liberation force and so on and so forth with funding and with international kind of opinion, to create international opinion for the support of the liberation struggle. I expected, because of the work that we did previous to 28th of March or 25th of March, for years we were fighting against Ayub Khan, military dictatorship, and so on, against Yahya Khan. When Yahya Khan came, some people actually thought that he was the Messiah to actually save the whole Pakistan. But we thought otherwise. We thought that he's another one who will actually destroy Pakistan, and that he will also be the one who will create some kind of oppression in East Pakistan, to East Pakistan people. So I organized a demonstration immediately after Yahya Khan came into power. And I went to different areas and so on, and argued the case that this man is going to be a disaster for East Pakistan. But I got a support. So people were, it didn't happen overnight. Because some of us were working for years in order to actually create some kind of consciousness among the people, saying whatever is happening in East Pakistan is something which is intolerable and it's not acceptable, and something has to be done. So people were prepared because they had the consciousness that what was happening in East Pakistan, the oppression that was going on, cultural oppression in terms of language and all that, and the economic oppression and so on. All these things people are prepared to actually, that it was happening. It didn't happen overnight. And the whole concept of the struggle in East Pakistan in the March 25th didn't happen just one night. It was a regular process of many years of hard work that some of the politicians like Bangabandhu and the others with him actually worked. And without those, and of course 52, the language movement and all that, which was the language martyrs, were the vanguards of this kind of revolution that took place later on. So the people here also, because everything that happened in East Pakistan reflected here as well. So we knew what was happening and all that. So people were more or less ready. And so we knew that there were a lot of people and so on. And people from different cities also turned up, because it was the first big public meeting in an open space. And so, yes, but the main purpose was to take the oath of allegiance. And then we didn't think about raising flag. It happened, as spontaneously, it happened automatically. But I remember that at that particular time in 1971, it wasn't like most of the organizations have got the microphone, the loudspeaker system, public address system. Those days, hardly there was any. The only person that I knew who had the public address system was the Dick Knowles, who was the secretary of the Labour Party. And at the election time, he used to have this on the top of the car. And I went into their car with him to campaign and spoke, going around and all that. So I knew Dick Knowles had this PA system. And Dick Knowles, of course, became later on the leader of the Birmingham City Council. And he was also knighted, Sir Dick Knowles. So I rang him and I said, look, Dick, I need your family friend. Because his wife used to teach with me at the same time. And he was a fantastic guy, actually. So I told him, I said, this is happening and I need your support and I need your solidarity with us and I need you to bring that PA system and actually install it in the park. So he said, yes, he'll do it. So he was the first non-Bengali guy that I approached on 26th or 27th, right, who actually responded. So he was the guy who actually brought in the PA system, installed it in his car battery. The car was left there. And then he went away and he said, I'll come back after your meeting and I'll sort it out. Birmingham was the forerunner. Birmingham was highly organized in terms of mobilizing people and so on. And that's why it was possible in Birmingham on 28th of March to have thousands of people turning up because we were the focal point in the whole of the United Kingdom at that particular time. Well, lots of people will now say, we have done that, we have this and so on and all this. But Birmingham was that one which actually organized this particular event, which is the part of the history. That was in that meeting, not only that I took oath of allegiance to Bangladesh and took the oath that until Bangladesh was liberated, we'll continue to fight and we'll never give up. But also the flag of Bangladesh, first time outside Bangladesh, was raised. So this is the history, and we are at the moment to actually get it recognized by the government of Bangladesh. This event of 28th of March has been recognized, has been acknowledged, has been registered by the High Commission in London, saying on record that yes, I, on behalf of the High Commission, agree that this was a fact that first time in the history of Bangladesh struggle that the flag of Bangladesh was hoisted outside Bangladesh in Birmingham. That is the history. But we are trying to get from the government of Bangladesh to recognize this one. We are continuing our struggle and we hope we'll succeed. Now succeeded in the High Commission or High Commissioner to admit that it is the case that the flag of Bangladesh was first hoisted outside Bangladesh in Birmingham. Now what we did was, after that, after 28th of March, I in particular, I was given the responsibility to go around to different universities to talk to the students in order to enlist their support. I was given the task of getting in touch with members of parliament whom I knew because of my connection with the Labour Party. Because I was at that particular time quite active within the Labour Party, with people locally as well as nationally. So I knew all those kind of MPs in Birmingham, and I remember in the time that John Stonehouse and Bruce Douglas Men, I knew them before that. And in fact, Bruce Douglas Men, one of the two MPs who went to India and saw in their own eyes what is happening, and he came to address a public meeting, Bruce Douglas Men. So we had a meeting in the town, big hall, and there were thousands of people there. And then we collected a lot of cash. So I remember he said, I'm not going to take the responsibility. Will you please take me to a police station? So he went to the Digbeth police station and he actually gave the money to the police and said, this is the amount of money. It's an envelope. I'll collect it tomorrow, because he was staying with me in the house. So then we went out for dinner. Bruce Douglas Men came and stayed with me in that house at Penswick Road overnight. And then I was responsible to go to different churches to talk to the church leaders and church meetings and so on. I was responsible to go to talk to the different Labour Party branches in Handsworth, in Solihull, in here, all over the place, in Hall Green. When they had special meetings, I went and spoke to them. I went to the different universities, Leeds, Manchester, and so on. Somebody used to take me after school. They came to collect me at 4 o'clock, took me to, let's say, Manchester, in the university, already arranged. And I went and spoke, and I came back midnight, and then went to school next morning. And there are also Quakers. I remember going to Quakers meeting and talk to them and so on. So in many demonstrations, we have had students, British students, we had Quakers, we had people from the church, we had vicars with dog collars and so on, walking with us in the streets of Birmingham and London together. So there was this solidarity which was shown. And then Indian Workers Association also came and supported us and so on. And then even Kashmiri Workers Union, they came and actually joined us. We decided that the Pakistan cricket team was coming to play test match in Edgbaston, and we thought it would be a good opportunity to actually organize a demonstration against, not only the team, but against the government, because they were representing the country, Pakistan. And we said, you might have seen this kind of little video saying, Pakistan is dead, in the sense that there is no East Pakistan with it. So Pakistan will be all on its own. There's no concept of Pakistan anymore, which I said it at 52 years ago. But we actually organized this outside the Edgbaston cricket ground on the corner of the Cannon Hill Park. You know Cannon Hill Park anyway. On the other side, opposite the Edgbaston cricket ground, on this side of the Cannon Hill, there by the entrance to go to Cannon Hill Park. And there are many who actually went on hunger strike on that day. And many people came, passers-by and so on, saying what was happening. So we then had the opportunity to explain to them that this was happening, genocide is taking place, the pogrom is taking place, mass killing is taking place by the Pakistani marauding forces and so on. So yes, so that was a great success. And of course, some of the people burned the Pakistani flag there and so on. So I was there, and I didn't do the hunger strike because I was sort of speaking most of the time and shouting and addressing on all that kind of things. But there are others who did, and there are some women also did it as well. And then we had the women's organizations. Mrs. Rashid was involved, Mrs. Muya was involved, and various other. There was another woman whose husband working for the bank. She was the chair of the women's organization. So they went to the city center and then campaigned for Bangladesh, raising money, in the little teens or something like that, and pass them on to the treasurer and so on. So yes, Edgbaston was also an important factor because that also, the whole television crew was there taking the picture of the game. So we knew that the international media would be there, particularly the television for covering the cricket and all that. I mean, there was no sense of belonging to any political party. Because at that time, unlike now, because either you were an Awami League or a BNP or Jatiya Party and all that, there was no such thing. There was individual allegiance. Like, for instance, because of my progressive politics, I was supporting originally Maulana Bhashani and then Bangabandhu, because he was the one who actually leading the whole movement and all that. But other than that, I was not a member, never was, never will be any member of any political party. I was never joined any political party, ever. Bangladeshi party. But I was a member of the Labour Party. But anyway, so there is no question of any allegiance to any particular political party for which they came. It wasn't, Awami League was not very strong at that particular time. The new created Awami League at that time, Ghosh Khan and others. They were also not, they were Muslim leaguers before, and they became, one of the reasons that I talked to Bangabandhu. You see, Bangabandhu, it's in my book, when he came to London in the night, next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, he rings me. And my wife, the telephone was my wife, Sheila. So she answered the telephone and she looked at the clock and saying 6 o'clock. And he said, who are you ringing at so early? So he said, well, tell him I'm his brother. So Sheila felt that my brother is ringing from Nauga. And those days, it was so difficult to get a line. You have to wait 1 day or 2 days. Called trunk calls those days, trunk calls. So, say, your brother, something is. So I said, ভাই বলে এই কেমন আছিস রে তুই? আমাকে তো তুই বলতেন সবসময়। তো তখন আমি বুঝলাম আমার ভাই মানে ওই ভাই, মুজিব ভাই। কি কখন আসলাম? বলে কালকে রাত্রে এসেছি, তুই এখনই চলে আয়। আমি বললাম এখন মানে কি, আজকে শুক্রবার, আমার চাকরি। তো বলে চাকরি তো ছুটি নিয়ে যায়। এখন ছুটি, আজকে যাব চাকরিতে, বলবো আগে ছুটি দাও, তা আমি বিকেলে আসছি, সন্ধ্যে আসবো। So he actually rang me in the morning. My wife answered the call, and then I took it over and so on. It was him who wanted me to go to his hotel and all that, gave me the address and where to go. So I went. And at that time, I remember, which I'm very sorry to say, that I went to a bank because the Mujiba that I knew then, he was not very well off. Bhabi used to come, his wife, used to come to visit every day with all the laddus and things like that, and pitai, titai, so all these things that he used to like. But Bangabandhu never used to eat alone. He used to share with all of us. So he used to share and all that. And I knew that they are not, because most of the time he was in prison, right, a political prisoner. And he didn't do, and he doesn't come from a Jamidar family or anything. So I took 300 rupees, pounds, at that particular time. 300 pounds was a lot of money in 1971, 69, yeah. And then I took it and I thought I'll give it to him and I'll buy him something or Bobby something. Then I went and then saw this five-star hotel he was staying. And all these guys, some of them are, including Ghouz Khan, that I knew, because I had to fight those people when I was fighting against Ayub Khan and so on. And at that time, there are these few people who are very much against me. And they said there are three people who should be killed. One is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, one is Tariq Ali, because he's a Marxist, and me, Communist Tani Haq. I was on Thursday. To some of the people, I was a communist Tani Haq. So, and some of my supporters didn't understand what it meant. He said, if anybody, there was a Tulawali guy who used to have a knife with him all the time. And he used to say to people, anybody calls him to Tony Haq, communist, I'm going to kill him. So I said, there's nothing wrong in being called communist, because a communist is like this and all. He said, but they say communist is bad. So anyway, so this was the kind of thing that happened. And, and all these people that I've worked with, there are young people who used to work in the factory. There are people who used to do a bit of studies part-time and so on and all this. And I used to work with them, Dobir, all these people, they were with me. I must tell you this, which is very important. That it's not only I alone that actually worked, because there are a lot of other people who made a tremendous, glowing contributions, and including some of the older people like Afroz Mian and others, but also people who, Aizullah Bhuya and others, Mr. Pasha and people like them and so on. And also there is another guy, Deepu was with me, and he was young, very articulate guy, educated guy, and he was with me all the time. And he was just 4, 5, 6 years younger than me. But he was very articulate, and he was one of these speakers. In Smallheath Park, there were only 3 people who spoke. I was the main speaker. Aizullah Bhuya, because of the secretary, spoke, and Dipu. And Mrs. Pasha came in because it was arranged that she would come in and say that I'm going to give my har, all this necklace and bangles and all this for this and so on, in order to inspire and motivate people and so on. But she was not a speaker. So the speaker was Dipu, I, and Aizullah Bhuya. These 3 speeches, and that's it. But then it was a very, very satisfying kind of meeting, because you were very pleased the way that thing went on, and that there was no squabble among leadership or whatever. So it was good. It was something that I said earlier on, that I was expecting something like that would happen. Actually, we expected a revolution, a socialist revolution, and many of us were actually preparing for it. And we often talked about going and fighting in the and so on, well, at a young age, and kind of idealism, if you like. People like Zakaria and I used to say, and a few others, used to meet up. We used to say, I think that our role would be to go back and actually fight for complete liberation. We didn't say Bangladesh or anything at that time, but to fight for the people of East Pakistan. And talking about fight for the people of East Pakistan, we also had the East Pakistan House, which I was a founder member. And I was a founder member. Zakaria was a founder member. In fact, Zakaria is the one who took the initiative because he knew there's a lot of people in London, rich people and so on. So the money was needed. So I was a founder member, and I used to go to London. And outside London, I was the only person who was a member of the East Pakistan. So I used to go there. And there is something else also, that when Bangabandhu was taken to prison, and then there was a Agartala conspiracy case, and we thought that his life was in danger because they will prove that he was anti-state element and that he was arrested for sedition and that he will be hanged to death. And so we organized a meeting in London, a press conference. Not a lot of people came, and we had the press conference in Green Mosque restaurant in Abdul Mannan Sanumia, who was the first member of parliament from Britain. Bangabandhu took him from Nabiganj, and we decided to have this Sheikh Mujib Defence Fund, and I was the joint convener with Zakaria. Two of us were conveners of that Sheikh Mujib Defence Fund. And I those days, because I was young and things I could do then, which I cannot do now. I used to go to, there was a Wilmore Bridden, most of the people, and BSA, most of the Bangladeshis used to work there in Smolit. In a Tisley, Wilmore Bridden, I don't know if it is there. And BSA is also on Smolit. So I used to go early in the morning, people who used to be in the night shift. I used to go to outside the gate, and I used to say that Sheikh Mujib Defence Fund and all that. And the receipt, I had to issue the receipt, £1. If somebody gave £1, I was very pleased. As if, I would embrace him. He was so generous. 50p or something like that, normal. I don't know whether anybody gave me £10 those days, but £1, £2 would be quite generous. And then I came to school, taught. 4 o'clock I went again, after 4 o'clock, for the day wages, day people, laborers, and then take money from them and raise the money. Then we sent Tom Williams QC in order to plead for Bangabandhu. So this is what I was a joint convener, and there is a book by Yusuf Chaudhuri. In that, he bought a ticket from me. I'm the only one in the Midlands or outside London selling the tickets and all. Yes, collecting money just outside. And most of the people I went to, the leaders those days, they wouldn't have it. They would say that if they support it, they will be at loggerheads. They will be in trouble with the government. So they didn't. No, I don't think so, because at that time we are very much inspired by the sentiment of the freedom of Bangladesh. And I think we are all united, working together. There are other branches. I mean, although there might be another branch like the Relief and Action Committee and all that, but yet we are having this for the same kind of purpose, same destination. And everybody was so generous and sacrificing a lot. For instance, we used to have a meeting at Gulistan restaurant on the Broad Street, Taj Mahal, but mainly in the Gulistan restaurant, which belonged to another Jamshed Miah. And during the day, of course, the Bangladeshi restaurants are not open during the day. So during the day until 5, 6, all day we could have meetings there. And during the day, lunchtime, because it is in the corner of Bradford Street and Mosley Road, in the corner of Mosley Road and Bradford Street. So from school, because I was in Sparkbrook, at lunchtime I used to go there and have a few things and so on. Because those days lunch hour was about an hour. So I used to go there and then do things and so on, and we used to have meetings. There are quite a lot of people I remember, and I miss them. People like Abdul Ali, who is a Chittagong sweet shop. He was very active, a young man. But now I think no, I would have done the same thing. Perhaps, I couldn't have done any more, because I remember sometimes without any sleep in the night at that particular time. I went to school because I have been to, let's say, Leeds, or I have been to Manchester, or I have been to somewhere else speaking, and Sheffield. I remember these three places. I went to the other places like Manchester, beyond Manchester. And then it, of course, about 3-4 hours journey sometimes, and then come back. And there was people who already lined up to take me and to speak to these meetings and so on. So he came back. So yes, I think I couldn't have done any more. And I wouldn't have anything differently, yes. But this is something that I'm very proud that I could actually take part, and I had a role to play in the historic liberation movement of Bangladesh.